This is hypnotic authenticity. This is a space for inner clarity, where hypnosis meets self-inquiry, where the stories that you carry can become gentle invitations for change. We're going to explore identity, emotional harmony, and authentic living through subtle, mindful approaches and a really, really good sprinkling of hypnosis. So take a slow, deep breath and let's begin. I'm going to talk today about the role of fear in personal growth, okay? In using your fear to actually identify, understand, and integrate the parts of you which are a little bit on the uneasy side. So I don't know, if you're one of these people who kind of thinks that your fears are your enemy, that somehow or other you need to hurdle your fears, overcome your fears, beat your fears, get around them somehow, delude yourself, mantra your way beyond your fear, something like that, then I'm going to talk about maybe a better way of relating to your fears. Because if you've watched any of my videos, you will have probably come to the conclusion that I think all feelings, all emotions are neutral, that they are just messengers, okay? And some of those messengers bang really loudly on the door, some of them less so. Some of the messages come up to conscious awareness, but some don't. Some kind of just bubble away in the background. Maybe you have a sense of a certain feeling, but you haven't quite realized it. You know, there's just sort of a background hint of a feeling. But for me, every feeling has a purpose. It has a drive. There is a reason for it to exist. And once you have understood the reason, well, actually, it tends to go away. It doesn't need to bang on the door quite so loudly anymore because it's made its purpose. And for me, fear is one of the hot buttons. It's one of the most potent emotions for getting your attention, but actually for shining a torch on where it is that you want to go. So what I'm saying is if you follow the fear, you can understand yourself much more deeply. And one of the methods for personal growth is by understanding what you think you are, what you really are, the meaning that you attach to all of that, and whether or not that's really correct. So if you follow the message behind the fear, you're going to discover the catastrophe that the fear is trying to protect you from. The fear gets in the way to stop you from taking action in order to avoid the catastrophe. So it's very important to actually kind of drill back and find out what is the catastrophe. Now, you may want to ask from that point of view, well, okay, is that fair? Is that a realistic potential catastrophe? Or is that just absurd? But what's probably more helpful is to kind of take a step back from the catastrophe, thank the feeling, and just open up to it. Let it breathe, let it expand, and learn what you can from it. The catastrophe may be very specific, but the fear probably encapsulates a certain sentiment that it wants to keep you safe from, to avoid. And it's by dialoguing with that you can discover. Now, my personal way of dialoguing with an emotion, be it fear or any, is to isolate it in my body. So a feeling, in my story at least, a feeling is felt in the body. So therefore, if I notice a feeling, especially if it's a feeling of fear, but honestly, it can be any feeling that I want to understand better, I go, okay, so whereabouts is that in my body? And whereabouts in particular in that part of my body is it? So I can point to it. and maybe give it a shape, give it a color. Learn, does it have a name? Does it have a goal? Does it have a purpose? How is it feeling? Does it have a texture? Does it have a temperature? Is it moving? Is it still? Kind of embody that feeling. And the reason why that's really useful is because if you don't do that, if you just identify with the feeling, and especially when it's a fear-based feeling, it tends to feel like all of you. And it's very hard, it's quite overwhelming to relativize that and come to understand it when it's everywhere. If you can identify with it, but put it out, isolate it, embody it, notice where it is, give it a shape, a color, a texture, a movement, a temperature, an attitude, a voice, a name, any of those, and whichever ones become most useful for you, then you're objectifying it, and you can then put it out in front of you, and you can look at it, and you can psychologically have a conversation with it and see what comes back. You can play your part, you can play its part, and you can see if there are parts of you that agree with it or parts of you that disagree with it, and you can end up understanding yourself better. Okay, so that's one way to look at fears, as a way to use them as a route to improving yourself. Another way that can be fantastic is to kind of get behind the fear and ask yourself, when you're feeling that fear, when are you? Because fear is wrapped up in this whole concept of time. And I always find it very difficult to talk about time. But just from the perspective of the feeling of fear, okay, fear, if we go back to this idea that it is trying to protect you from taking action that might lead to catastrophe, what's happening with the fear is that you feel the fear now. Now, it may well be that the fear is feeling fearful now because in front of you is a saber-toothed tiger, in which case that fear is very valid. But if you are feeling fear for something that might occur in the future, then ask yourself the question, when am I? Now, that's a deeply philosophical question, but it can also be a deeply practical question. Can I go to the fear event now? And of course, if it's a catastrophe that you're worrying about in the future, then the answer is no, you can't go to that fear event now. It's the now is a series of events which kind of roll from one to the next, on and on and on. And our brain creates a concept of time around that. It kind of sees these events as being along a thread. But that's a story that we're creating inside of ourselves to help us make sense of what's going on. And so we're projecting that string out into the future and saying, well, look, if you carry on doing what it is that you're doing, then that might happen. And therefore it's safer that you don't. So the fear has a purpose, it has a protection reason to it. So it can be very useful to understand that when you are noticing this sense of fear, which you didn't choose, it just came up from you, then you observed it. Well, when are you? Or maybe where are you? It depends, if the catastrophe goes on within a certain environment, are you even there? I talk on one of my other videos about psychological illusion, about the idea of, you're standing at the top of a cliff and the fear-based thought comes along, what if I slip and fall? And the only candidate for the what if I slip and fall thought is someone who's actually stood perfectly okay looking out over the cliff. If you're already slipping or you're already flat on your ground and your feet are dangling off the end, or God forbid, you're hurtling down the side of a cliff, well, none of those individuals are thinking, what if I slip and fall? They're having a far, far more realistic thought process about survival. So the only one that is thinking the fear-based thought is the one that hasn't experienced that, isn't in that circumstance. And I've talked before about this book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So you can look upon that noticing that when you are experiencing a fear, it is not occurring now, that you are intellectually somehow transporting yourself into the future, as a form of comfort. Okay, so the fear isn't occurring right now, I am imagining it, but also that the only way to progress through the fear is by taking action. Okay, because the objective of the fear is to get you to prepare, right? You kind of think, okay, so if I prepare even more carefully, then this will not be fearful. And sometimes that's useful, right? Sometimes there are indeed things that you can do to mitigate risks. But there is a certain point at which you face the unknown. So you've done all that you can do, you've learned whatever it is that you've learned, you've considered the potential risks, and then you're faced with the choice of, well, do I do it or do I stay in fear? So using the psychological illusion model can help to reduce the fear or rationalize the fear and say, okay, this is a messenger which is trying to keep me safe, but the thing that I am feeling actually isn't occurring right now. That can be useful. It can be, okay, so this fear is showing me that there is something extremely important about whatever it is that I'm thinking about behind, and so I need to pay attention. But then ultimately, you're faced with a choice, right? You have realized the point where you've kind of done everything that you can do to prepare, and then it's up to you. And this is the critical thing for personal growth, okay? Because personal growth does not come from your comfort zone. It does not come from doing what you know how to do. Personal growth comes from learning, which means it comes from doing stuff that you're not competent about, that you are not capable about, that you are not qualified to do. And in so doing, you learn, you receive feedback, and then you course correct and you adapt and you come to learn new things. So for me, I although it doesn't sound very comfortable, I come to look at fear in a warped sort of way as saying, somehow or other, I'm kind of on track here. This is a little bell showing me the way, a shining light showing me that there is something down there which apparently is very important to me, that has consequences if I get wrong, but that is important enough for me to warn myself about. So some of those things may be utterly nonsensical. Okay, so let's go on that. All right, there are certain fears which are very valid, they're very reasonable, and you should just simply listen to the message and go in another direction. But if you find that the fears are coming up with stuff that you want to do, that it feels as though you should do, but fears are stopping you, take that as your organism shining a light, ringing a bell, that actually you're not being complacent. You are not sitting within your comfort zone. You're not living a lie. You're pushing forward. You're learning. And that takes courage. It just goes with the territory because you're facing the unknown. But the only way to know what you don't know is to do something, to do a small, small step forward that delivers feedback. And then you course correct, and then maybe you continue down the way, or maybe you kind of take a slightly nuanced route. But it's in the act of taking a step that the fear dissolves because you learn about it, and what was unknown is now known. So you replace a fear of the unknown with some feedback, with some credible, tangible knowledge, understanding, experience. And so fear is replaced with that conclusion. Yeah, and that is where personal growth comes from. So for me, fear is fantastic. It's the most wonderful hot button for personal growth. It's showing you exactly where you need to look more closely. Ultimately, all this kind of goes back to the considered life and to taking action towards the direction that you personally feel you want to go. And the more that you do that, and the more that you receive feedback, and the more that you kind of think, okay, well, turns out it wasn't as bad as it was, or even if it was bad, well, at least now I know I don't ever want to do that again. What you're doing is you're making progress. The alternative is kind of death. It's kind of ossifying. It's getting nowhere. There's no authenticity in remaining within your comfort zone. You're just kind of languishing and going nowhere. So I hope that's kind of interesting. So fear, absurdly, is your friend. Fear is a fantastic thing. All emotions are your friend, but fear in particular is it's like a complement to your inner compass. It's kind of saying, okay, so all these things are potential, but this one seems to be particularly sensitive. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, maybe it's absurd, but maybe it's important. If the consequences are large because it's important, then you need to understand it more. It's valid, it's relevant, it's important, it's not occurring now, it's a potential worry about something in the future. What is time? How do I fit the eternity of now that kind of unfolds into a theoretical story of a thread towards the future, which is entirely created inside my brain? And can I use all of that to gain the courage to actually take the actions that I want to take, in the knowledge that I can take small enough steps that if it goes in a way that I wasn't expecting, I can learn from that and course correct. And if it goes in a way that feels good and right for me, then I can adjust as need be and funnel down into that. And so you end up learning about yourself. You end up understanding more about yourself, and you're facing what feel to be quite substantial hurdles. And so you end up trusting yourself more. You end up having a better sense of self-esteem, of your own personal capabilities. You're growing your competencies. You're growing your emotional regulation. You're growing personally. All right. I hope that's useful. Cheers. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If it resonates with you, then follow my podcast. I would also personally be really grateful if you might wish to leave a quick rating. It genuinely helps others to discover the podcast. If you personally would like more guided meditations, you want some deeper insights, you'll find all my links in the description. If you prefer a more visual boost, then you might want to check out my YouTube channel called Authentic Life Hypnosis. And if you're looking to do some deeper work that goes beyond one-way audio, then obviously you're very welcome to reach out. Equally, if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.